thank y'all. Rohit contacted me when I got back from the woods and asked me if I'd like to speak this year. And I said, sure. I didn't really have a topic. And so I've been hunting with my friend Matt, and he has spent thousands of hours developing products for fishing and for boating. And so one of the things that came to light I thought might be interesting to y'all was dredge fishing from an outboard. It won't be for everyone, but some of this you might find interesting. So the kind of the concept here is I grew up fishing out of Fort Pierce, and we would, the day before, we would rig up baits, had our bucket with our rigs in it and all this stuff, and so you go out there and you put your baits out, and in an outboard boat, you're kind of limited on space and stuff, and so we would take our fish attracting device, and we would put it on our leader with a hook and a bait, and you can end up with something quite large, and you put it out there and you fish, and an extraordinary fish come along, you might get that mess down the hatch and hook it, and then you might get lucky enough to stay attached to the fish long enough to get it up and gaff it, but there was a lot of pulling the hooks or missing the fish. And so I fish that way just because that's what we do. But then I kind of moved on to fishing in a big boat, and I learned how to really fish from this man right here, Tim Skeet Lanahan, world-renowned angler, bill fisherman. And so on some of the larger boats, what they do is they separate the fish attracting device from the fish catching device, right? So, you know, if you go out there fishing, you put a bait on a hook, you put it out, but you're trolling, it's not very sexy and it doesn't attract things. And so, have you seen like Hawaiian eyes, and they call them islanders and chuggers? Does anybody have any of those on their boat? Yeah, we all have them. And we put them on our line in front of the hook, and we put a bait on it, and it ends up quite large, right? Well, you look at some of the fish we're fishing for, they ain't got that large of a mouth. How do you get it all down the hatch? You know, so it makes sense. Some of these fishermen are fishing, and they got a lot on the line. They decide, hey, why don't we separate our fish attracting devices from our fish catching device? So your rod and reel, your line, and your hook goes to a bait. And on a lot of these big boats, what you're seeing is a small, medium ballyhoo and a hook. That's all there is on the fishing line. And then all of the chuggers and the plugs and the islanders and the sea witches, all that stuff, put it on a thing called a dredge. And you pull it with no hook. So you attract the fish with this extravagant device that might look something like, look at this damn thing, right? So you pull this along. I mean, what fish in the ocean wouldn't swim up and look at that, right? Believe it or not, I got a lot of hours. You can see this thing's kind of wretched. This is the damnedest meat fish dredge you'll ever pull behind your boat. Every meat fish anywhere will come up and try to eat that thing. And what happens is, when they come up, you pull it back there, okay? And you put a little ballyhoo right behind it. They're going to eat it every time. And if you have trouble hooking them, all you got to do is put a circle hook in front of it and just sit there. Don't even touch your rod. And a dolphin fish, he'll come up, eat that thing, and hook. The circle hook's so tight you can't get it out. You reel him up with the boat, throw him in. Rarely miss him, rarely pull the hook. Because a lot of times, this thing we're putting on our leader, it slides up away from the hook, and that thing's out there flapping around, and it pulls the hook out. You ever had that happen? Yeah. And you get a nice fish. You know, in today's world, there's a lot of people fishing, and we're all fishing for the same fish. There ain't quite as many giant fish. And when you get an encounter, you want to not only want to get it down the hatch, you want to stay tight to them. And so, you know, I know the circle hook thing is a lot for bill fishing, but you wouldn't believe how effective it is on striking fish, the fish we're fishing for, mahis and stuff. So anyway, what I wanted to do is give you a concept of separating your fish attracting device from the fish catching device. And then I'm going to show you all a few different ways you can pull it. And these are some extravagant tools that we're going to go over, but you can pull this thing off a piece of rope off the back cleat if you want. You just have to pay attention, you know, don't put it in the wheels and stuff. But anyway, so this is kind of our seminar for tonight. We're going to take some questions and stuff, but I want Matt to come up and kind of give you a history of his company and how he came up with act of dredge fishing from an outboard that was done and kind of, I believe, is Chris Martin passed by now, Skeet? He was kind of the first guy to put the dredge together. Okay, and then along came, and dredge fishing, very commonplace all over the world now. But it was just invented by very dynamic thinking guys that just didn't do the same thing every day. They got more bites and figured out how to do it. And, so anyway, Matt develops this company and sees this going on and says, "Hey, how do I bring this to an outboard boat?" So anyway, without further ado, Matt.
Thank you, sir. So, quick story. I met Sandy while I was fishing the SKA Kingfish Trail, and somehow, and I'm not quite sure why I did this to myself, but I got Sandy. I said, "Hey, how about we join forces?" And I joined with Sandy and Wiley Nagler from Yellowfin, who, if you ever met Wiley, is a challenging man. And Sandy is reformed today, but back in the day, he was possessed with catching fish. Possessed. We didn't win the tournament. Oh God, I wouldn't talk to him for a month. If we just see it's your next tournament. But we were kingfishing that day, and when Sandy retired from kingfishing, he went and chartered Glenn Cameron and learned how to dredge fish. And Glenn's mate was Timmy, and Glenn and Timmy and Sandy went to the Bahamas, and they won the BBC, which is the biggest tournament going on there. They beat the entire fleet combined in points just with one boat. The whole fleet with five tournament series. Then Sandy went back with Skeet and did it again the next year. So I was enthralled with the dredge fishing thing, and I knew what they had done, and we had kept in touch somewhat. And so I came down, I chartered Glenn Cameron. And if you haven't done it, and you can pull up a bunch of money, I really recommend it. It's a great day on the water with one of the finest fishermen that I know of from this area. And I learned so much. And my deal was I had a center console. I couldn't afford this big boat. And I was trying to figure out a way to dredge fish from the center console. And we did the deal, pulling off the cleat, and that worked okay. Definitely is way better to pull a dredge off a cleat than to not pull a dredge. Hands down, you will see more fish. They come up close. They're in the back of the boat. Sailfish, blue marlin, white marlin. You know, get out a little bit deeper. Certainly the mahis, they will come in on this thing, as he said. They'll be there, and you can beat them that naked ballyhoo. But the problem is with the outboards, and as we got to twin outboards and then triple outboards, and a lot of guys have quad outboards, you really need to get that dredge out into clean water. And so we worked on it for years, to be honest, and tangled up more stuff. And initially we started running the dredges off of the outrigger on the center console, and that's what we built those outriggers to do. But what we found out pretty quickly was trying to catch a fish, once you've hooked the fish on an outboard with your dredge hanging from the outrigger, you can't get around. So you've got to fight a fish. If you hook a blue marlin on an outboard boat, you need to fight him off the bow. You need to chase him down forward, because you can't back up on a center console like you can with a sport fish. So we had heard about some guy making dredge booms, and they were big aluminum dredge booms, and they beat up your boat. You couldn't collapse them or anything. So we came up with this dredge boom. And this is a collapsible dredge boom. It goes out to about 8.5 feet, and it works really, really well to get that dredge outside in the clear water. And that's where you need to have your bait, is your bait sitting out. So put your teasers on your outriggers and go out the long rigger, and then have your dredges, and then fish your flat lines. You only need 2. And if you really want to fish 4 lines, you're going to need probably 3 or 4 people. And we came up with this dredge, and we've done very, very well with it. And when Sandy came back, and we got reacquainted, and he said, "Well, I need to fish a dredge, but I need a dredge to be way out there, way, way, way out there." And so we came up with this dredge boom, which is an 11.5, somewhere in that range, fixed dredge boom. And it allows you to pull almost anything you want. You can pull with the Sportfish guys, you can pull a quad tier or triple tier dredge if you want to. It's not going to collapse, where if you put too much weight on this one, it will eventually suck down. It's not going to do its job. So this big 11-foot boom is take apart so you can store it. And I would just encourage you guys to try dredge fishing. It is by far the most fun thing you've ever done in your life. having a sailfish, between me and him, I mean, it's right there, and you're dropping that bait in his mouth. It's just a really, really special way to fish, and it is more effective. That's why all the sport fish boats, that's what they're doing. So I'll let Tim Lanahan speak a little bit about how he developed this system.
Hey guys, my name is Tim Lanahan with Jim Lux. Yeah, so really what we've created here is like a feeding scenario. You've got essentially your bait ball in the water that you're towing behind the boat as you move from spot to spot. And to Sandy's point, yeah, you've got your fish tracking device and then the device that you're going to engage the fish in, which is your hook rig on your rod and reel. So even if if you're not necessarily blue marlin fishing or sail fishing out front, and you still pull this thing around to catch mahis and put a wire rig out there to catch a mackerel or a wahoo, these pelagic fish will come to it, and it's just giving you a better, longer opportunity to engage the fish rather than the four values you've got out there with a little chugger or a sea witch on there, where those fish swim up, they check your bait out, they either eat you or you don't, and they swim off. Come mahi season, you'll see these fish. The entire school, when you pull by a pallet, will come off that pallet and line up behind this dredge, and now you're pulling an entire school of mahis off of the structure they were on into your boat. So it's a great way to engage fish. You don't have to get so wrapped up in the natural bait side of it and put all the money into that. An artificial dredge and the other dredges you might see are what we call the shower curtain, which is these mylar strips. Those work just as well. They last really a very long time. You can stow them in a hatch, and yeah, it's a great way to get more bites and catch more fish, and most importantly, have a better opportunity of getting that hook in the fish where it needs to go to eventually catch and land it, whether it be again a meat fish or a bill fish. Does anyone have any questions about any of this? Sure.
What are they made out of?
These are
No, not the baits, the rods. The dredges.
These are these.
The dredge
Yeah.
booms are carbon fiber.
Carbon fiber.
These are carbon
okay.
fiber.
When
Sure.
you're pulling the mylar, what rod, do you have to have all that big stuff? Or can you just use a rod with what pound test?
We started off using just an 80-pound reel or a 50-pound reel with a stiff rod, put horizontally out the boat, and it'll pull a smaller dredge, but you'll see pretty quickly, once you start doing it, and it's a great place to start, is just start with a 50, an old stiff rod, but you're gonna want more and more stuff out there, because it really is, the more stuff you've got out there, the more fish you're gonna pull up.
You're going to want to pull something, like some 200-pound mono at least, or 300-pound mono at least to get started. Like an old bottom fishing rod, something you find at a garage sale, might work for you. But really, it's the setup like this that once you get it, once you get yourself rigged up to do it, this time of year coming up here in the spring, it's a lot of fun. Sure.
What's the damage?
These booms are,
The poles, just the poles.
No idea.
yeah, they're right at about $1,000, the 8-foot boom. This is a bit more. Again, you can find something, or like a downrigger works really well. I know a lot of folks have downriggers. Downrigger, you can set up the same mechanical advantage that you have here with the pulleys, and fish it that way. Fish a little smaller dredge, maybe something with not as many baits on it, a little lighter lead. It'll work just fine. And you'll get the concept, and then it'll kind of snowball from there.
Sweet.
How far down you have to be?
Really, there's no set depth. You just want it to be below the surface. So that depends on speed and then the amount of baits that you have on the dredge. The more baits, the more lead. The faster you go, the more lead. So it's a balance there, depending on what baits you put on the dredge.
You're just making noise and flash and
Correct.
stirring shit up to attract fish.
That's right.
Your boat is the biggest attractor. The boat with the props going, all that, they're gonna come up and take a look at that. But now you're showing them some baits behind that. And then you've got your lonely little ballyhoo sitting back there. And they're always gonna take the easy meal, just like we would. And that's kind of that's the concept.
Let's show them some of this.
Is the dredge into prop wash or not?
Yeah.
Ideally, you want it off to the side. So you'd want it in that forward rod holder on the side of your boat, angled perpendicular to the boat, and kind of pulling it that way. And that's what this tie back is for. So if you can imagine that going up to your breast cleat or your forward cleat or to a handrail somewhere forward, just to kind of take some of the pressure off of the torque on the rod holder. Because it can get significant. The bigger the dredge, the heavier the weight, the faster you go, the more torque on everything.
So y'all, the dynamics of the dredge, if you notice, there's a few things you're going to want to do. You see these big swivels in here? So the thing's got to be able to twist. So you depend on how many bars you pull. There's a dredge bar, okay? You see how there's a swivel in there? Without a swivel between each bar, you're going to have a mess, okay? Another thing you can do is you can use 7-strand cable in here to keep something from coming up and cutting it off, because it does get, it takes a lot of time to build this thing, takes some money, but when you say how much weight, number one, use a fish lead, okay? See the difference between like a sash weight, like a deep drop lead? The fish lead creates a planing effect, and it gives you more pull down for your weight, okay? So you don't have to have a giant lead. So I use a 4 to 6 pound fish lead, depending on how many bars. I mean, you can pull 1, 2, 3, how many bars you want, but that's a fairly extravagant dredge, okay? It gets a lot of attention, and you need something, picture this behind the boat in an outboard. If you're gonna fish 2 of them, you gotta get them out there, because otherwise there's nowhere to fish. You got a bunch of white water in the outboard. You need to get out here, and you don't want to be fishing on top of your dredge. So what we did, this is the optimum rig. You got an LP. A lot of people have these for deep drop, but then I brought this because this is an old deep drop reel, okay, of which a lot of people have. And you can just get a collapsible boom, put it on your deep drop rod, and you can pull something like this. As a matter of fact, White was kind enough to build this, and we're donating this tonight. Somebody's going to win this, but you can pull this right off of a rod, 50 weight rod, and you put a 3-pound sash in front of it. But put your swivel. If you notice on the back of the fish lead, there's a swivel. Always have a swivel. So you got a swivel here, got a swivel there. You want a swivel between your lead and your dredge. But what you can do, if you have something really light, then just pull 1 bar. But the key is pull something to get the fish in there and stay a bit, and then peck him off with your ballyhoos. So, there's a fairly light dredge, and that one's kind of heavier, and it depends on, if you're starting out, you can use a piece of rope, but what you'll find is the further you get your dredge out, now when you're fishing in the back corner of your boat, you can hold your rod tip out and hold that ballyhoo in some clear water right behind your dredge. I fish a dredge to where I can see it, but I can't necessarily see the fish behind it. You just pull your ballyhoo a few feet behind the back of the dredge, and they're going to come up to the dredge and they're going to eat the ballyhoo every time. You don't have to see him. He's going to come up and grab it. So you can start with a rope or the heaviest rod and reel you got, and you just time the size of the dredge for the size of the gizmo you got. I mean, I didn't start out with this thing, but what you quickly find is you're going to get bit a lot more often. The fish is going to stay around, and like Tim says, the school of dolphin, not just one's going to peck off the float that you see, they're all going to come. Or if you're just trolling down the rip, they're going to come. So, any other questions on? Yes, sir.
What kind of speed you dragging out?
I troll fast as I can. I'd love to troll 8.5 knots, but you can't do it in an outboard. So a little faster than the next guy's cool, because you can get an extra turn on everybody else, but uncomfortably fast.
They don't come up to the surface or tangle.
Oh yeah, if you don't have enough lead, they're going to come to the surface, and you just slow down a little bit. But you can either downside, if your dredge is constantly coming up, so when it's rough and you're going down sea, it's gonna come up a little bit. But that's okay. It shows the top of the bar, it's okay. If the thing starts cartwheeling out of the water, you gotta slow down. Or you gotta pour more weight on it, or just take one of the bars off. If you got 3 bars,
How far back are you running them? You wanna see it?
I wanna see the dredge a bit. You know, just, let's say
30 feet
50.
or 50 feet?
Minimum 50. I like a minimum 50. I want to get it away from my outboard because I believe outboards are fish repellers. They're just repellent. The further back there, the better. And you really don't have to see the fish. Put your dredge out. I start at 50 feet. That's a good place to start. And then set your ballyhoo at 60. And they're going to boom, 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 back it off. If you're not getting bit, go back a little further. The depth of the dredge really it's not significant. You don't want it out of the water, but the depth of it, the dredge is a kind of a misleading term. It's not like you're dredging the fish up from the bottom. No, you're giving the fish a place to orientate to so it can hang out while you catch it. Yes, sir.
I hope this don't sound stupid, but when you're fishing, an inexperienced fisherman like me and my fishing partner, when we get a fish on, do we get that dredge out of the way right away, or do you?
You don't have to. I mean, especially in an outboard, what's cool about it is you get a fish on. If you start out and you're fishing one of these things, then turn the opposite way. Put your fisherman on the other side of the boat. Keep fishing. Maybe you get bit again, right? If you got 2 of them out, then you make a turn. And what I do in an outboard is I send my guy with a fish on up front, or at a 45. You leave your mess out, and then if you got the hands, you can shorten it up some. And then when you're like out of helpers or out of baits, you got fish on everything, then you pull it on up and let it hang. That's why you don't want to set this. Okay, so most boats, you know where your flatline rod goes? In the rod holder in the back, right? Don't set this thing there. Set this thing up in the middle of the boat. Okay, because you're trolling along, you get some grass on it or a plastic bag or something. If this device or whatever you're pulling your dredge with is in like the center of the boat, rod holder, or the forward holder. Now when you shorten it up, if you stand back a bit towards where your flat line is in the rod holder, you can reach over and clear it, and it's not clear back there, right? And so when you shorten this thing up, and see, I didn't really explain the A-frame system. So if you notice, was that an adequate answer for your
Yes, sir.
question?
Thank you.
So I think of things as we go along here, but you notice the line comes off, goes to a pulley, and goes back. And so as you let it out, there's actually 2 lines going out. So it's a A-frame system, they call it, but it gives you a lot of pulling weight. Versus if you just ran your line out there and ran it out, the pulling power it would take would be dramatic. So when you bring this thing in, it's hanging here, but it's not so far out that you can't take your fishing rod and hold it up while the fish is out there and move your guy around front. On big boats, we run them off the outriggers, and so we're hanging, but it's still up towards the middle of the ship. It's not back here. So it's easier than you think to get this out of the way. I mean, when you look at this damn mess, you think, oh my gosh, how the hell do you fish with this? But it really, if you think about it a little bit, common sense, you move this stuff forward. Now you can service it easy without reaching out the back. Plus it gets out of the way easy. And another thing, this is tied off to a cleat kind of forward, right? So what you can do is I grab the line and I pull this, and it rotates all the way forward. So now when it comes time, if you want to gaff it, if you don't want to gaff the fish off the front of the boat, you can gaff it off the back corner because this thing's laying clear up.
Oh, okay.
You see, they rotate. You just rotate the thing forward.
It works best in a swivel rod holder.
Yeah, having a heavy duty swivel holder. If you're going to go to this trouble, change out one of your rod holders for
You're
it.
using 0 degree?
0 degree, yes.
Yeah,
And an adjustable, like a Winthrop butt,
Yeah.
to where you can kind of get it angled. It's super rough, you're gonna have to run it higher. If it's calmer, you can run it as low as you want, possible. And I'll tell you, this is a pain in the ass. It really is. The first time you do it, you're gonna be cussing us, I promise you. It's a lot to manage. And the only thing I can tell you is just stay with it and get used to, messing with it, and you'll see you're catching more fish. And when you're catching more fish, you don't mind if it's pain, right?
And it is, y'all. It's a little overwhelming at first. That's why I start out with something simple. You ain't around by the best damn rig, pull the thing. But realize having the adequate device will help make it simple. But it ain't hard, with the cost of fuel and boats and everything and your time to go fishing, you're gonna get bit. It is a big difference, and you're gonna a lot of it, and you stay hooked. I've suffered the frustrations of putting lures in front of a bait, and it just your catch rate is not extremely high. And you can pull. Like a lot of guys, they have no artificials on here. They just rig mullets and clip them all on here, and that gets very time consuming. Whereas if you scoot on along quickly, these things create flash, and it's pretty much, in most cases, it's just as good as a natural bait dredge. Any other questions?
I didn't see it from the back, but you got the 2-to-1 reduction there.
Yeah, here,
Yeah,
the A-frame.
right.
Yeah. So what we're doing, we're coming out.
You
Go ahead.
always use that.
I always use an A-frame, even if I'm pulling a smaller dredge. What it also does is the dredge comes in at a pace that's sane. These reels can go super fast. They're basically built for deep dropping, and it's just got more power. It's more fluid when you have the double line system. There was another, yes sir.
So up off Carolina tuna fishing, we use spreader bars a lot, 5, 6, 7 baits on them. You go to deploy it, first baits start hitting the water, start flipping, want to flip over your second, further baits out. You finally get that straight, you start going out, hits the first weight, then it wants to flip. How the hell you deploy something with 15, 20 baits without getting it in knots?
Okay, let me show you key to this. So what you want to do, what do you notice about this right here? Don't make it long. Keep it short to the bar. Okay? You'd be shocked how easy this thing deploys. Now, this guy here, the squids, let's keep you handling. Okay. So the squid thing, that can tangle up a little bit. But what you don't want to do, don't put one right here. Don't put a single in the back. It's a target for the fish. The single in the back is the one on your rod. But you wouldn't believe, now, this is demonstration. Normally, I pull these in the back and this in the front. I did this because this is what I had put together, but you would want these fish in the back, these in the front. Pull that thing all over the ocean and rarely had it tangle up. When you deploy it, there is a technique to it where you drop the lead and lay it in, and it's the job on my boat of the captain to deploy it as the mate drops it over. If you throw it overboard and it comes tight, yes, roll it over. So if you're by yourself in your outboard, like me and my dogfish, what I do, when I chunk the damn thing over, I got the drag backed off to where it can immediately start just, not backlashing it, but it starts out. If you deploy that thing, because it's not a spreader bar, it's got lead on it. It gets down in the water column and immediately pulls. I think that's the primary difference between the spreader bar and the dredge is that lead, it's a planer. Them fish leads, when they hit the water, and the eye on the lead's halfway back, it's pulling, so you got force right away.
Right.
There was one more. Yes, sir.
I noticed the colors pink and white, and then the others were purple and black. Are you targeting specific fish for that, or is there certain colors for different fish?
Yeah, I think colors like fishermen, we're all different. But my experience is, I call them meat fish or pelagics, but if you're not strictly bill fishing, pink is great. The pink thing, they called it when they invented it. I was over in San Salvador, and a guy pulls up next to me in his right new whatever, and Yeah, I didn't really think he knew a lot about fishing. He throws this pink thing overboard that it was store-bought. I custom made my dredges and I had my colors. Man, I got convinced of getting them. And that's what happens. I mean, Skeet wouldn't be called dead with pink on his boat. But that pink, every meat fish in the ocean loves it. If I was going right out front here to catch meat fish, I'd pull pink. I prefer I asked Trey if he could give us a black and blue, black and purple. I kind of like that. I do think on real, this is kind of opposite, but my experience on sunny, clear days, it's great days for bill fishing, but I like lighter colors, red and white, blue and white. On darker days, I like darker colors. There ain't as much contrast, right? But darker, cloudy days ain't as great for bill fishing, but I've had great meat fishing days when it's cloudy. So color's preference, but I can say anywhere I fish, if you put pink out there, pretty much they love it. If I had one color, I'd pick pink for meat fish. Yes, sir.
He said it's a real pain in the ass.
At first, it is.
I would make one suggestion that you probably didn't think about, but just take your time and go slow when you put it out and pay attention.
Yeah. You don't want to get in your props.
You don't want to be talking to somebody when you're putting that out. Just,
And there's
Well-
we have a lot of diagrams on our website. If you want to go see, it's all free.
Oh, cool.
There's a lot of videos about it. Go to White's Tackle. Go to your local tackle shop. Those guys know how to do it. Most of them are dredge fishing. You know, at least some of the times they'll help you get set up. A lot of the tackle shops have great videos. RJ Bull's got a whole bunch of videos on dredge fishing and stuff, and that's how I learned it. Was
what
just
is
with
your
him.
website?
I'm sorry.
What is your website?
Gemlux.com. GEMLUX.
JimLux.com. Yeah. And Matt says the pain in the ass. Matt goes fishing to have fun. I don't. I go fishing to catch fish. So, guy, you know, Matt's a great guy. He's just the same guy. He goes hunting to have fun, fishing to have fun, he's having fun. I don't do it to have fun. We have fun, we get in the dock. So let's go catch some fish, and whatever it takes, right? I will say this, you know, we talk about white stuff. I rolled in the Brooks the other day. There's Alex. Is Alex here? Yeah, Alex. I roll into Brooks the other day, get some live shrimp, right? You want to go to a place to get some sane counsel? Go to Brooks. That honorary old guy that was there for 100 years, he ain't there no more. There's Alex, man. He's so friendly. And I was getting some bait. I was getting some shrimp to feed my bluefish, my bait fish. I roll into Brooks, and a nice guy, you know, and Alex owns the shop, and man, it's very pleasant. I run into another nice gentleman there. Did I run into you the other day at Brooks?
He couldn't make it.
He couldn't.
I told him to come on out.
Okay, I invited a guy to the meeting I ran into there because he was just a great guy to join the club. You know, he looked like he didn't know a lot about fishing. He's in there talking to Alex. Alex is giving him all kind of good information. But really, you can go to the tackle shop, and the guys will share a lot with you. But Matt's website is a wealth of information. And the products that they have developed over time, this is a small portion of what they got. And I will say this about his company. They do invest in the fishery and the future of fishing. And so Matt puts a lot back into it. But anyway, any other questions on the dredge fishing?
I got one. Is there anybody willing to try it?
Yeah.
Do.
Life's too short not to.
Cheers.
Oh, man.
Okay, y'all. Who else wants to try? Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. Y'all, I'm sorry.
You get a hat.
The senior most fisherman here, I'm sorry, he's going to get this one. Bud.
Oh my.
Y'all, Bud was here before I ever even came to the fishing club. I was a kid, and Bud Tillman, I got to tell y'all a story about Bud Tillman. I had some family come. You know, Bud and I used to live across the canal from each other, and I moved off, and I moved back now. But I had some folks coming in from out of state going fishing, and I had broken my vessel, which was very common. And Bud was kind enough to offer his boat and everything in it. And he took me and my cousins bottom fishing that day. We caught a 46-pound
2 girls and 2 guys. The girls learned and the guys didn't.
Yep.
Sandy was gonna show them how to catch a bottom fish. And he said, I want y'all to watch this. Now, you never jerk. In deep water, don't jerk. And so he lets his line bait down, and he makes one crank and the rod bent over double. And he just cranked up this big ass group.
46-pound Warsaw grouper, but old Bud saved me that day. So Bud, thank you. And Bud, look, that's one of 1,000 stories. Bud, pick this thing up on your way out.
I will, man, I use that.
Yes, sir.
Guys, we're gonna put some hats and some shirts up. Come up, pick one up, please, you know, till they're gone. The sizes are on the bags.
Thank you all so much, but I do have one comment. I have one comment. When you talk about this being a pain in the ass to learn, for anybody that has fished for a long time, which I have, anytime you try a new technique, whether it's a planer or a kite, there's a learning process. And in the beginning, you'll go, why the heck did I try this? And then you talk about a kite and you go, well, I did pretty good with this one. Let's try 2 kites. And then it gets more exciting. So yes, there is a learning process, and I'm sure there's a big learning process with this. But it's worth the try. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.